All right, good evening. It is our quarantine drinking team series here on BourbonBlog.com. And you're watching us live. If you see this, we're about to have a very special guest join us from Breckenridge Distillery, my good friend Bryan Nolt, founder of Breckenridge Distillery. We have been going live. This is our 10th night. Every single night we have been going live with another distiller, someone from a great whiskey brand. It just gets better and better. So keep watching this. As far as I know, we're the only media outlet that's gone live every night with another distiller on Bourbon Blog. Keep on coming back, watching these. Tell your friends about this right now because we're about to try something amazing. And Bryan Nolt of Breckenridge Distillery will be joining us in just a moment. I'll show you what I have while we're waiting for Bryan to join us. I have the Colorado Breckenridge Bourbon. I have their Powder Hound, a new, fairly new limited edition. They released around Christmas time. And then I have their port cask whiskey. And I have some spiced rum as well. So Bryan is about to join us. Bryan Nolt. They started this distillery around 10 years ago. And we've been going out to Breckenridge, joining those guys and pouring their whiskey in our Why Whiskey Educational Series because we're such big fans. Now, we are thinking of all of you tonight, especially the bartenders, the servers, all those in hospitality who are not working right now. It's not easy right now, right? But we're trying to make it a little more fun for you, and we're trying to raise some awareness about some great things that distilleries are doing. So here's Bryan Nolt, live from Breckenridge. Let's see if he's going to come on camera right now. And I think we have him. Here he comes. Bryan is coming into the picture. Says it's connecting. There he is. How's it going, Bryan?
Good, man. How you doing, Tom?
Good evening. Good evening. Great to have you here with us on our quarantine drinking team series. And what are you sipping on there?
You know, I decided to make an old fashioned tonight. So yeah.
Is there a special recipe you have with the Breckenridge?
Well, you can make it the way Billy makes it, which is the best way, but you have to barrel age some shit. So I just whipped one up.
Well, I'm gonna pour a little Breckenridge bourbon and join you at that. And Billy, cheers to Billy. Billy's always making great cocktails. When I've been there at your distillery, you guys usually have some barrel aged bourbon on hand, or barrel aged old fashions, Manhattans on hand, right?
Yeah, totally. Barrel aged lots of stuff, some cocktails on tap too. We've had the sort of Solera Manhattan, where I think Jordan and I made a giant Manhattan in a 53-gallon barrel one night, like 12 years ago, and then it's just been topped off, ever since. And it has a spout on it, so you just go up and you open the spout and fill your glass. It's kind of cool.
Very nice. Show. Let's see that drink again. Let's see. Can I? They're very nice.
Sure.
Cheers, buddy. Cheers.
Got a little orange in there. Yeah. Cheers.
You and I met quite a number of years ago. You guys were just getting started. How many years ago was that you all started the distillery?
Well, I got going in 2007, and then didn't get in to the building until 2008. Right. And I'm guessing, man, I don't know when you came out, maybe like 2010, something like that.
Yeah. Really?
2011 at the latest.
Really early on. But we'll talk about the history of Breckenridge Distillery here in just a moment. Tell us what's been happening since, the last couple of weeks since COVID. I mean, what's been going on at Breckenridge, and what have you guys been doing?
Oh my God. We really got hit kind of early in the high country. So when the first sort of cluster of cases started popping up, they really hit in one county over in Eagle for some reason. And then Aspen got hit really hard as well. And around that time, we had like one or two cases pop up. So they clumped us in with all the other mountain communities and said, there's community spread. And so they just shut everything down. So they closed the ski resorts, early. And then they just started closing everything. And so just the early uncertainty was a little crazy, not knowing, were we going to be open at all or what was going to happen. And the messaging wasn't really consistent, so we had to play it by ear. But then they said, okay, we're shutting down everything that's non-essential, leaving restaurants open for takeout and delivery. And we have a restaurant, And then they decided they wanted the tasting rooms and tours closed at distilleries, but distilleries were considered essential. So, we've still been making booze, and, when we make booze, we make a lot of spent grain. And so that's an animal byproduct. So they consider that to be essential as well. So that's still feeding the cattle. So after we sort of figured out the lay of the land, we just decided to make sure everything was safe at the distillery for people to come to work, make sure that everybody who wanted to work could come to work. And, if your job was not really happening, then we'd find something else for you to do. So we started doing family meal, breakfast and lunch every day. People have been showing up and working hard. And so it's, in some ways, it's a lot of the operations are still going and other things aren't. And we jumped in early to help the community, wherever we could. They let the kids out of school, and they, a bunch of kids depend on lunch and breakfast for their good meals. So we started feeding the school kids. They could come by and pick up lunches until the school got ramped up and could handle that. And of course, the hand sanitizer saga we've put out. I think I've spent around 20 grand probably in supplies, and
Wow.
we've just been giving it all away. And mostly almost all locally, police, sheriff, fire department, EMS, banks, construction sites, health department, all those people. And raise money.
Right.
We've raised a couple $1,000 for USBG, and just been sponsoring a lot of industry stuff in Denver. We're a small community here. Breckenridge is only a couple thousand people, but
Right.
Denver's, it's where the majority of our friends are and the bartenders, and we have strong relationships there, and they're all out of work. So we've mobilized along with everybody else, and we're sponsoring lunches and things like that. They can just drive up and get a lunch from a restaurant that we're giving money to. And, man, you name it. Anything we could think of, we've been doing,
That's great that you're doing that, and they can do that there if they're in the hospitality business. They can come by and see you for the lunches and for that type of thing.
So that's been going on in Denver, yeah. So the Colorado Bartenders Guild's been running that, and they've been it's pretty easy to find where to go for that stuff.
Right.
And Litch has been working on that. You remember Litch?
Yes.
And so
listen, Litch is watching, so cheers to Litch.
Yon Litch, cheers, man.
Breckenridge friends watching. Yeah, no, you're doing great work, and we appreciate everything you guys are doing. Well, tell us about, for those people who haven't, I think a lot of people watching have had your bourbon, but let's start at let's start at the original bourbon. What are we sipping on here?
Well, so this is our blended bourbon, I believe, is what you have.
Yep.
Bourbon. So
Yep.
This bourbon, the signature thing about this one's high rye. So any bourbon we blend in there is high rye. The blend consists of grain to bottle Colorado plus Kentucky, Indiana, and Tennessee. The blend is blending bourbon's a lot harder than making bourbon. To keep it consistent and get access to all the stuff that you want. And we started blending bourbon, a long time ago. And what we did was made relationships and got to go into barrel warehouses and ricks and taste barrels and find stuff we liked. And so we decided to, in addition to serving what we made, the grain to bottle stuff, we also had the blended bourbon. And it's cool because it's fun, and I love to blend. And I come from I was a Scotchophile, so that's mostly blended stuff. And so we decided, we wanted to blend bourbon, and it's hard to do that, and it's gotten a lot bourbon, and it's become really tricky to find the really good aged stuff. And so we kind of do less blending these days than we used to, but yeah, that's the blended bourbon. So it's a high rye bourbon. So the Breckenridge component's 38% rye. And the lowest component of what's currently in here is probably around 20% rye. And,
wow.
I love a more complex bourbon. So the super approachable bourbons I find less interesting, and the sweeter bourbons I don't like as much. I prefer, just bigger whiskeys in general. And the rye
Right.
spice and white pepper is what I love in this blended bourbon. And that's what we blend to, is always towards that same profile.
Right. Always been a great bourbon.
And I
you
drank
and I
all
have
my
had,
old fashioned, so I got to top off here.
you need to grab a little bit more. You and I have had some great whiskeys and cocktails all across the country. New Orleans tells the cocktail, of course. You and I climbed a mountain together. We did Mountain Baldy early on. I actually just posted that video earlier today. You'll see it if anybody wants to go to our Facebook or our Twitter. I found that old video of you and I climbing Mount Baldy, and I posted it. So go to Bourbon Blog's Facebook page to see that, because I realized I hadn't even posted it to YouTube. It was on like Vimeo or something. So definitely watch that. But the bourbon's great. About how old is it, Bryan, again? About what are the age, the blended age? I think we're having, are we? I need battery. I think we are, I'm not sure. Are you guys hearing, are we back? I think we're back now. I think we were, I wasn't hearing you. Tell us about how old the bourbon is. Yeah.
One more. There you are.
About how old is the bourbon? Tell us again. Yeah.
Oh, sure. So it's a blend of different ages. So the youngest stuff in there is almost 5 years, and then the oldest stuff in there is 10 or 10 or 11.
Yeah. Cool. Great stuff. Excellent. Yeah. So great. So okay, we're going to do the what should we go next to? To the Powder Hounds? Let's go to the Powder Hound next.
Yeah. Great whiskey. I know you love that one.
Powder Hound in front of you?
Excellent. I do. I've got batch 4 right here.
Excellent. That is the one I have as well.
Oh, nice.
All right. Let's give that a try. Now you've been doing, is this your 4th year in a row?
No, I think Powder Hound's like 3 years. I think this has just started our 3rd year of Powder Hound.
Excellent. So, what do we have here, Bryan, on the Powder Hound?
Well,
this is because you're raising funds for a great cause.
Yeah, definitely. This is ski country. We're at like 10,000 feet here, and everyone who lives here pretty much skis. So we are a bunch of Powder Hounds, and then the one common thread of the distillery is the dogs, man. It's just, we always have dogs all over the place. So we raise money for a local animal shelter, and I mean, we've raised, the last check we gave them was like $20-some thousand. Wow. So we've raised a ton of money for them. But the Powder Hound came about from the way we blend, and so we taste every single barrel in the warehouses, and then when we blend, we tend to put barrels in one of 4 flavor categories. Every now and then you have a barrel that doesn't fit into one of those categories. They're pretty rare. Sometimes they don't fit in because they have a ton of like ethyl acetate. Sometimes they'll have like anise notes, or there's just things that are unusual, and you can blend them in, but then they're just kind of lost in the blend. So we save those back. There aren't a lot of them. You maybe, I don't know, just a couple every 1,000 barrels or so. And so what I used to do is fill my decanter with them, and eventually we had enough that we could start doing something different with them. So we started experimenting and blending those together and doing like really cool release of whiskeys that are just really unique. And I mean, we can't keep Powder Hound in inventory. They're just amazing whiskeys.
They really are. So this particular one, what were you getting on it that made you think, hey, let's keep this one back, this particular one?
I'm gonna have to. I don't remember batch 4 specifically, so I'm gonna have to get a glass and put it in my non-old-fashioned.
The non-old-fashioned
here. Yes, I don't want to mess it
And
up.
and last year's was amazing too. We did a review of that on our YouTube channel. This one is just so beautiful. I was really impressed by this one. Again, this is only about one barrel that you make of this or so that you release.
Yeah, again, so we'll usually it'll be a blend of several barrels. I don't remember what batch 4 was, but I mean we'll be pulling like 3 or 4 pallets together, and we let them get pretty old. So some of these have a quarter or less volume left in them, and then we just start experimenting. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh my God.
Now, what I loved about this particular one, I got tons of brown sugar, a really creamy
Oh
brown
yeah.
sugar creme brulee thing on this one.
Yeah, there's lots of caramelized everything on this, including
Right.
butterscotch on this one, which I love in
Yes.
bourbon, man. I just I'm always looking for. I have 2 things that I look for in bourbon. On the nose, the first is that like super dark caramelized banana, like that Bananas Foster, like you get like on the
Okay.
Pappy
Yes.
23 or like the
Buttery, creamy, some fruit, nice
yeah.
summer. Yeah.
And then the other is butterscotch. So we can concentrate butterscotch in the small barrel room in Breckenridge, and so
Right.
the single barrels that we do are really butterscotch focused. So that's the other thing I look at. But this has a ton of butterscotch on the
Yeah.
nose. Yeah, just
Very.
tons of
It's
like
candy.
caramel and brown sugar and
Yeah. Almost in some ways kind of a Werther's original thing, but almost more intricate than that. But it's the candied buttery note is beautiful on this.
yeah, man. And
Wow.
so this has a lot of really nice rice spice on it, and this has a lot of concentration of wood. I mean, which is a bit
Yeah.
unusual. Like on the back of the palate, and the finish is extra woody on this one, which is not typical for us. So it's fun to blend some of those things together. Man, we have
Yeah.
some crazy barrels that that are going to be coming into one of the batches sooner or later. You just have to figure out how to use them, And we have 2 barrels in particular. One of them is really, I mentioned anise, man. We have one that's just really anise forward, and then one that's similar but more like a black licorice version of that. And so people that really love those flavors will occasionally ask me or Hans for a favor and say, "Hey, would you thieve me a little bit out of that barrel?" I mean, it's just such, that's what's cool about these just one-off whiskeys,
So what's the magic that makes these bourbons? I mean, and I obviously I have some understanding of it, going from single barrels, doing single barrel selections, but describe to us, your version of what the magic is that makes some barrels so magical and that you hold back.
Well, it's just it's usually in how they taste. Occasionally, it's on the mouthfeel, with the ones that have the ton of the ethyl acetate, and none of us know what makes those barrels outliers. The theory is that it's the wood, because we can have the way we do it is, we do vertical pallet stacks, so we have 4 barrels per pallet, and lots of these days, we make 23 barrels a day. Back in the original times, we just made 1 barrel a day. And so now, you'll have all the pallets will pretty much be the same juice. Whereas before it was like, 4 days in a row. But you get the differences still, right? And so it's something about the wood. I don't know if it's that the wood, it had a certain number of staves that came higher or lower in the tree, or all those staves are select, so they should all be around the same age. And I haven't noticed things change as there's been abundance or shortage of barrels over the last 12 years. So I think it's just I don't know, whatever compounds are concentrated in those staves, just does different things. So
If you all have any questions for Bryan Nolt, ask them down below there on Instagram. We'll be happy to forward those to him, and just, it's good Q&A in real time. That's the fun part about our series. We're doing this series every night during the quarantine, so keep coming back every night. I'm going to have Trey Zoller from Jefferson's, founder of Jefferson's, tomorrow night. Monday night, Drew Estate Cigars is joining us. All of our guests are on BourbonBlog.com. Keep coming back. We're so glad to have you with us, Bryan.
Yeah, sure.
So someone asked,
you got John Drew. John Drew's coming in a couple days.
Yes,
yeah,
that's
he's
right.
A good buddy of mine.
You got it. No, we enjoy their cigars a lot. And
definitely.
Actually, question is, does the elevation affect your whiskeys and your spirits?
Yeah. Yep. In a lot of ways. So we, Jordan and I started making whiskey soon after we met in California in 2007. And so everything that we made, we worked out original mash bills and stuff out there. And, I don't think he'd made whiskey anywhere but California. Mm-hmm. So we learned to do everything at sea level, at least kind of what we wanted to do here. And right. then when we got out here, and similar still, Vendome pot still was originally what we used, and we still have that one, but now we have a giant system. But everything was different. So the interesting thing is, altitude affects boiling point, obviously. So the vapor atmospheric pressure is lower, so everything evaporates or distills off at a lower temperature. So we found that everything started coming over at much lower temperature, everything, the heads, ethanol, everything. The other thing we noticed right off the bat was the usual settings we had on the condenser for your flow rate of water, which is in the worm tube and cools the vapor back down to liquid. We just kept turning it down. And finally, it was running really slowly. And the reason why you can do that is because the water's so damn cold up here, So on the distillation side, that's the difference. On the mash side, there's nothing's different, but your water is so important in terms of your, the type of water that you have. And so you definitely want no iron, no sulfur, very hard, high mineral content water, which is exactly what we have up here. So we don't have to do anything to the water when we mash, except make sure the pH is correct with what we're doing. And then everything else from there is kind of theoretical. On the fermentation front, people talk a lot about this theory that lower atmospheric pressure gives the yeast more ability to move. I don't know that that's necessarily the case when it's in solution. If they're floating around in the air, that'd be one thing, but they're in liquid, so I don't know that matters so much. And then with the aging, you just have to be careful up here because it's really dry, and so the evaporation can be tricky. And we definitely concentrate ethanol up here. So if we just put a barrel in the warehouse and don't add humidity, then it concentrates, alcohol concentrates. And then the only other tricky stuff is boilers deregulate at altitude. So when we grew and upsized and started doing larger systems, we couldn't use just the conventional low efficiency boilers anymore. We had to go to a high pressure system because you deregulate BTUs. And if you talk to any distiller, they'd probably complain about two things. One would be the boiler and the other would be stillage. So the boilers are they're such a nightmare to deal with, and at altitude they're even tougher to deal with.
Yeah, as you've always said, it's the one of the highest distilleries in the world, the highest distillery in the world, right?
Yeah, definitely. At one point we definitely were the highest in terms of altitude.
Right.
And I'm not sure that we are anymore, but Breckenridge is known for other things as well. And so not my bag, but most people that work here definitely, yeah.
That's great. Someone said has a question. They're talking about Compass Box blended scotches. and what is your opinion of whether the question is, what's your opinion of Compass Box blended Scotch and whether your blends are better straight or in cocktails?
Ooh. And so we haven't released any blended malt whiskeys yet. Right. That being said, that is the next giant category for us because first off, I love, Scotch and malt whiskey. And secondly, I believe that that's where spirits are going. I think this bourbon bubble, I agree with most people in thinking that it will be bursting here at some point. And I think that's the next big category.
Is American single malt. Do you think that's the next big category?
Yeah. So there's two ways to look at it, right? So there's American single malt, which is what our dark arts is. And that was actually the first product we ever made was the dark arts. And the
beautiful product. And that's that is for people who don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So it's a malt whiskey, so it's technically like a Scotch, but it's made in America, so you can't call it Scotch. You used to have to call it, and you still technically are supposed to call it whiskey distilled from malt mash. The American single malt category is kind of being defined right now, but it's essentially like Scotch. And that is the real reason why I started the distillery, was to make a crazy Scotch. And the bourbon came along because I love rye whiskey, so I decided to do a high rye bourbon, and that's where that whole thing got wheels. But the very first things we made were these malt whiskeys. We only released them in batches, and they're called the dark arts. They're in a cool. Let me find a box here. So you can see one.
It's a beautiful, and they're about how old are they? Because they are really lovely.
Yeah, man, they're right now. Anything coming out is over a decade old.
Because that's the first thing you all laid down. Were those?
Yeah, and bourbon can mature. Bourbon typically matures really quickly, but malt whiskey does not. I mean, if you want to make a big malt whiskey, or Scotch in particular. So there's the box.
Such a beautiful box. Look at that.
It's got a dragon on it for a reason, because it's a gigantic whiskey.
It's a big
and then there's the bottle.
Is so nice. Look at that. Great bottle too.
Yeah. So
dark arts.
Yeah. So but dark arts it's a giant, and it's a very different whiskey. So as someone who loves Scotch, you can simplify Scotch into two ways. It's either like the Highland style single malts, which are really delicate, and there's tons of flavors and smells and everything that come together. And I've been cursed as a super sniffer, super taster, which, trust me, as a doctor, is not the skill set that you want to have, but that's the one I got. I wish I could my skill set was I could dunk basketballs or something, but that's not the one I got. So anyway, you can simplify Scotch kind of into those two categories. So they treat the malt like one of two ways. They either like kiln it, or they peat it, right? That's not how Americans do beer. So American brewers, have a very different theory on using the malt library and different levels of caramelization. So their treatment of malt's very different. I came at it like how crazy, like a crazy American brewer would. So how could you like push this malt all over the place and get all these different flavors together and concentrate them? The trick is that when you burn or char or caramelize the barley, you're getting all these great flavors, but you're also sacrificing ethanol yield. So so it gets a little tricky. But anyway, what we came out with is this giant, enormous whiskey. It's super malty. It's super chocolatey. It's got a lot of like orange peel and apple and stone fruit, and it's just a massive whiskey. And I always say it's kind of like a Ferrari monster truck of whiskeys. So that's the dark arts, and it's super hard to get, and it's really expensive, and it's in limited quantities. But we're getting ready to release these blends, and so what we've been working on for over a decade is bringing in all this whiskey from Scotland, and we're getting ready to do blends of Scotch and the dark arts. And these whiskeys are exceptional. So Compass Box is a very well-known blender from Scotland,
right?
Who, where I don't know which whiskeys he's used or whatever, but has blended these Scotch whiskeys and, released them at a price point that's better than what you can get,
Right.
a lot of single malts these days. Back, when I used to drink the Balvenie 21 Portwood, and it was $70 a bottle, and now I haven't bought one in a while, but it's probably like $300 or more. I don't know. But anyway, the Compass Box, I've had a couple of them, and they're just really nice.
They are lovely.
The one I've had the Spice Box, which is just a really nice, a lot of subtle flavors together, and I've had the Peat Monster. I'm not
really good. Yeah,
I'm not so much of a peated guy. And then some friends of mine have got me turned on. I actually have a few more bottles that I haven't tried yet, but definitely want to try.
There's some nice stuff they do. So you all are actually going to be doing you're going to blend Scotch whiskey from Scotland with your dark arts in a new blend. When's that going to be coming out? What are you going to call it? Do you have a name for it yet? Or
Yep, we do. So the first one we're releasing in probably about 6 weeks is called Two Clans.
Oh, nice.
And then we're releasing the peated version for the peat lovers out there, and that one is called Peat Fetish, and that'll be later in the summer. Peat Fetish, like foot fetish or feet fetish. It's peat fetish, yeah.
Peat Fetish. And are those going to be are fairly limited? Where can we find those?
Yeah, I think what we're going to do, we'll play it by ear, but I think we're going to allocate them. The cool thing is that so the Two Clans is ready. It is phenomenal. I mean, it's ridiculous Scotch whiskey essentially, and I mean we could probably sell it for over $200 a bottle. But the whole point of that one is I think like to be an influential company or product in this movement, which is getting ready to happen. I feel like we need to help kick it off, and so we're actually going to price that just a little over the bourbon. So I'm thinking that the Two Clans is going to be retail around $45 or $50 a bottle, and the package is beautiful. It's in a standard single malt style bottle, and we're just running super skinny on the margin, super skinny, because I want people to try it. Yeah. And then the peated version, we'll put at a higher price point because I think I'm not trying to go find new consumers or develop a new category. I think like the peat lovers will just get it. So again, that could be $200 or more a bottle, but I'm shooting for $80 on that one retail.
Are you all going to be? I mean, I know there are a few brands doing they're blending Scotch with bourbon, but as far as your own single malt that you all have made blended with a Scotch, is that are you going to be one of the first?
No, that is it.
To do that?
Oh,
as far as American single malt blended with?
Yeah, I don't know anyone else that's doing it.
I've not heard of this before with this particular project. This is amazing. It sounds really.
Yeah,
good.
I haven't either. And again, I started on this like I mean, I didn't. The dark arts wasn't old enough to really start trying till about 5 years ago. So for the last 5 years, we've had enough because when it's young and angular, it's just the dark arts would just totally take over the blend with the young wood, and so it was hard to be patient. But it's one of the most exciting products for me because I love whiskey, but still some of my favorites are the malt whiskeys. So. I'm excited.
Oh yeah, no, your dark arts is beautiful, and we've been lucky enough to feature it at a few of our tastings. It's amazing stuff. This is sounding so exciting what you're doing with this. And again, for those of you just joining us, it's Bryan Nolt, founder of Breckenridge Distillery. And if you have any questions, tell us down below. Someone did ask about. They said they were really excited to hear about the the new project you're doing there with the scotches. Are you telling what areas of Scotland, or where you're getting those scotches from, or is it more of a mystery? Or
Yeah, so it's a blend of a lot, but it's mostly Highland
mostly
stuff. Yeah.
no.
So I mean, I tried everything, Highland, Speyside, which is a subcategory of Highland.
Yeah,
There's Isla in the peated versions, and then most of the Scotch, though, a lot of the Scotch is Lowland Scotch. So I mean, the only thing I couldn't get is I was unable to get anything from Campbellton or
okay,
Orkney Island to blend. So there's like the five regions. So plenty of stuff from the three, and then so Isla, Lowland, and Highland, and then a subcategory of Highland Speyside. It's within a certain distance of the River Spey, and then way up north is Orkney Islands, and I couldn't find anybody willing to part with any Scotch from Orkney. And then Campbellton, for a long time, Campbellton is like western edge just below Isla. They're mainly peaty, super peaty whiskeys. So and for a long time there weren't really any functioning distilleries there. So I think that they're just trying to catch up. So that I wasn't able to find it. But if you know anybody that's got Orkney or Campbellton, send them my way. I'll see if I can fit their whiskeys into a blend.
send them Brian's way. No,
Please.
I can't wait to try it. Now, someone else asked, amazingly, about, which I happen to have some of, your port cask finish. Someone just asked about that, and I actually was going to make that the next one. Now, I was there, amazingly. It was a great coincidence. The very first day, several years ago, I don't know, it was 3 years ago, you all started dumping the sherry barrel finishes. I was there for the dumping of that. It smelled amazing that day. The sherry is so good. Tell us about the port, though. That's the one I have here, and we'll talk about the sherry too.
Yeah, I think there are flavors that go together just naturally, and port and bourbon, they just that's just a match made in heaven.
Yeah.
And so once you figure out you want to do that, then it's just what style of port. Are you going to use vintage port or tawny or whatever? So it took a while to figure out what we wanted, and we do tawny casks. So obviously all the casks come from Portugal, and we do tawny style. And then you get a hopefully freshly dumped cask, and then you just figure out what proof you want it to live at in the barrel, and we blend sort of a style that we think is going to marry well with that, put it in the barrel, and then it sits in there several months, and it's interesting because you let it go for at least 3 or 4 months before you start tasting it. And then it starts maturing really quickly and getting the flavors that you want, and then all of a sudden it's ready. And then if you let it go longer, then you regret it, because once it's ready, it is ready. I mean, you get it out of the barrels and put it in stainless ISO tanks until you can bottle it. And the same is true.
Is it so? You're looking 3 or 4 months. Then is that about how long the finish is?
No, it's closer to 8 months.
Closer to 8, but you're trying.
Yeah, we start tasting it. Yeah, you start tasting it early, just because you never know. You know what's going to happen in a barrel. It's sort of like in your smoker, seeing what's going on with your ribs. You gotta.
Right.
you don't want to go too early, but at some point you got to start poking around in there a little bit.
This is beautiful, and this is now the type of port cask you use is what?
Tawny
port cask.
Yeah, we use tawny
finish. Looking for this one. The sherry is also beautiful. That's in the PX cask finish.
Yeah, definitely. And so as the person that loves the full sort of range of whiskey, wine, kind of everything being stuck with the nose and taster that I have, I love sherry. I mean, I love sherry, and I love it from the super dry, Fino stuff, all the way through. I mean, cream sherry is okay, even sometimes late at night, when you want kind of a sweet fortified tasting thing in your glass. So we started on the Fino end and ruined a lot of bourbon as we worked our way down. And when we were working on this, there were no sherry cask bourbons, at least that I knew of then. And now there's several of them out there, but it was not until I got towards the cream side, the sweeter side, that we found stuff that worked. And the PX was just the best. So Pedro Jimenez, particular grape, Andalucía region of Spain, and we started getting barrels off of a Solera that is a really ancient Solera, a couple hundred years old. And so lots of times they couldn't even tell you how old the barrels were, but 100 years old or older. And then we got you get the dry sherry notes, which are really nice, but it's really tough to balance dry sherry with the sweetness of American whiskey, of the bourbon. So you find that balance, and man, that balance is, I mean, it's literally like the day it's ready is the day it's ready. And one day later, like it's like, no, it's like, holy shit, this was so much better yesterday. And then a week later, it's like, oh, no. So when it's ready, you got to get it out.
A little increment, those small increments make a big difference.
It does on
That's
the
amazing.
sherry, big time. Yeah.
Wow. Well, the port's beautiful. I mean, the port notes on this bourbon are incredible. This is, a real favorite of mine, and the sherry is too. They're both really beautiful.
Yeah, the port is definitely a fan favorite, and the sherry is like for, I would say, a more discerning palate.
Right.
The one thing I will say about the PX finish is that is the go-to whiskey with a cigar. So when you have JD on in a couple days, ask him about that one, because that and in fact, when I smoke a cigar, it's always a Drew Estate. That just goes so good with the PX.
It's really nice with the cigar. I agree. I tried some of you. I think it was a couple years ago. You had a Sauterne finish. Tried that one. Loved it.
Yeah, man, that one's actually I have a bottle of it right here. So that was a one-off, and we got Chateau Yquem barrels for that one. And Chateau Yquem, it's Bordeaux region Sauterne. It's
right.
One of the most expensive wines you can get. It's like $700 for a 375. It's crazy delicious, world's best dessert wine, most people would say. And so getting a couple of Chateau Yquems was pretty awesome. So that, however, took a long time. It was like 2 years, I think, in cask.
Very nice. So again, check. You can find the PX and the port cask finish. Your high proof is beautiful for cocktails.
Oh, for sure. And actually, just drinking, honestly, it's
it's so good by itself.
I prefer. That's one of my favorite neat bourbons that we have. You would think at 105 it would be hot. It drinks way better than 86 proof, honestly. And that's a credit to the distillers. They picked that proof, and it's a winner. I should mention that I'm a little nervous that we're going to stop selling all of our bourbon SKUs other than the one we're getting ready to release. We're getting ready to release our rum cask finish, and it's so freaking good that I'm afraid people are going to quit buying all the rest of our bourbon.
But I mean, you're gonna stop selling. Say that once again.
No, I'm just afraid that people are going to stop buying everything else once they've had
when's the rum one?
The rum cask. I mean, it's pretty close. It would have been out by now, except we had to do some maintenance on the pot still that we make the rum on. Our agitator was in the shop for like 4 months, so we got a little behind on making rum, because we have to make the rum, age it in the barrel, and then put the whiskey in the rum barrel.
And this bourbon is finished in your used rum barrels, which I have a little of the rum right here. We're gonna
there you go.
Perfect segue. Now I did see Bart Woman 7 says she's drinking the Sauterne finish right now.
Nice.
Bart Woman has some of that. That's great. It's nice to see some friends. Tell us down below what you're drinking. Tell us down below what your favorite Breckenridge Distillery spirits is. You have some great vodkas as well. You have some other great products. The bitters. We've always loved all these products, but it's exciting to hear about, Bryan, the new Two Clans, you said, is the name of the one?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And the other one is going to be called the
Fetish.
Pete Fetish, the Rum Cask Finished Bourbon. Anything else coming up that's new?
A lot of gin stuff is going to be coming out here pretty shortly, and then so several different halos off of the gin, and we're also finally going to release another Amaro. So the bitter is the one that everybody loves. You know, it won best liqueur in the world, New York Spirits, and it's double gold, and was just featured in like Sunset and Liquor.com, both like in the last couple of weeks. But we have sort of a Cardamaro style of that, so it's the same Turin style bitter that we make, the Amaro, but it's more cardamom forward and a lower proof. So it makes this came at the request of our bartender friends who really love those styles, and I do too, but they really love them, and they also like the lower proof, so they can have a little handshake and, you know, do a couple of them in a night. If someone wants to buy them a drink, they can buy them one of those and not wreck them. So we're looking out for them, you know.
Oh, that's fabulous. So Amaro, this new. Well, let's try the rum itself, and we'll talk about the bourbon rum finish. I've always been a big fan of this rum, as you know. I'm a big fan of this. The spices, the complexity. What do you put into this to make it so special?
Yeah, so on the rum, gosh, I mean, it was like 10 years ago, maybe, or 9 years ago when we decided to release this. So at that time, all these, you know, giant brand flavored rums were coming out, and I mean, don't get me wrong, they're super fun to drink, you know, the spiced rums,
right.
but you know, they're based off of something that was quite different back in the day. So we sort of wanted to make the real version of that. So you can't take shortcuts. There's no fake flavors, no vanilla, fake cola, lots of sugar. You know, that's while those things are fun to drink, this is done the original way. So there's about a dozen ingredients in there: barks, roots, fruit peels, spices, and it's all done by maceration. So the original style, it kind of, if you could put it in a bucket, I would say that they made it like in a holiday spice kind of style. And so, you know, there's definitely cinnamon in there, but it's all the rest of the holiday spices that come together that balance it out. And so that's the original way to do it. And, you know, it's not a flagship product for us by any means, but it's traditional and it's heritage, and that's what spiced rum is supposed to taste like. This style too is, you know, it's definitely the British Caribbean style, where you try to concentrate some of the off notes, you know, that some people don't necessarily pick out. But, you know, I mean, if you look at the different styles of rum, each style is concentrating different notes, and I really like funky notes, you know, in things that I drink. And what I like about the British style rums is the sort of the plasticky notes, you know, that are in there, like, and like kind of like hot water bottle, you know, and those odd things are, you know, things we try to pick out and bring in. And so I mean, for the person that can really appreciate those, that's kind of in there. So that's the style. And, you know, it's just based off the original stuff.
It's beautiful stuff, and like you said, it's Christmassy. It feels sort of like, you know, this is a time right now during COVID we can use a whole holiday feel.
Yeah.
So if you
totally
want to get in the holiday mind, definitely taste some of this. About how old is this? How long do you age this for?
Oh man, it's like 2 years. After 2 years, that style doesn't get any better. So we'll do like a blackstrap rum, and you know, like a full blackstrap molasses rum. Like I don't want to drink that until it's over 20 years old. So hopefully I'm still alive when we start releasing those barrels.
Blackstrap. Lots of great people joining us. Cheers to Mark, who just joined in. Bart Woman, the one that had the Sauterne, says she's using the CBD bitters for old fashions.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Yep.
Is that a project you guys have, the CBD bitters, or is that a Breckenridge product? Or is
Who,
that...
us? No, no, we don't. We do sell. We have a lot of partners all over
Right.
the spectrum, from food, coffee, tobacco, everything, and we have a couple people that we work with that do just really good. They make a really good dashing bitters, and
Okay.
have a CBD in them, and people
Nice.
love them. You can at the distillery you can buy a little kit that they sell, and
Wow.
so yeah, you can make like a really great old fashioned with those babies.
I bet she's. And what's the name of that company again?
You would ask me, damn it,
Don't
Jesse,
worry,
if you're
it's
on, tell me.
okay. Someone wanted to know about cocktails. I saw the question from Jana, looks like, about cocktails with teas. I know Billy's
Oh
done a
yeah.
lot of great cocktails. Has she ever done any cocktails with teas in your bourbons?
Oh hell yeah.
Yeah.
There on our cocktail list at the bar, there will always be, oh gosh, I would say at the bare minimum 2 or 3 cocktails that we make that have tea in them.
Yeah.
And I if you want to think about it in terms of what you're putting together, I would think of it like punch. So think about making a punch, and you're going to get a lot of tea in punch, and things that will bring up mouthfeel. And I think that's sort of how we approach, a lot of times we approach cocktails from that perspective. I mean, there's that way, and then there's also looking at the traditionals, and then taking a twist on 'em. And Billy's just phenomenal at
Yeah.
at doing that either way, or just bushwhacking, and she'll just come up with stuff that's ridiculously amazing. I never had a bad
She's very
cocktail from
talented.
Billy. I mean, it's amazing. And I was on the Punch Kings tour. We would do 10 to 15 cities, and we would taste at least 5 bartenders cocktails, and we did this for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. So and these are the best bartenders in America that are making these cocktails. And so I had the pleasure of getting to taste and judge their cocktails. But we would joke around that the people that ran it knew Billy, and they were always like, we should do a different version of this, called Beat Billy, see who could do a better cocktail than Billy, because I mean, people can't. So she's the best.
She does an amazing job. As someone just said, Annabelle saying she's freaking awesome. Lich says the name of those CBD bitters is Strong Water CBD bitters.
That's it. Strong water. Yeah.
So
sorry,
thanks for sharing that.
Apologies for that, but
no, it's all right.
my mind is sort of loaded up with other. Yeah, and Tico tea. Yeah, the Ticos is
Tico tea is what he said. Yeah,
that's our go-to tea for sure. And
nice.
we sell it. You can just get a cup of tea, spot of tea if you want it at the distillery. But we use the Tico teas in our cocktails as well. Excellent.
Well, I love this rum. The cocktails are so good. The restaurant there at your distillery is so good. You want to say a little something about that, because that's a real experience.
Yeah, it's I would not recommend getting in the restaurant business to anybody, even before COVID. I mean, it really is one of the hardest industries out there for a lot of reasons. The margins are almost zero. The demands from the consumer are absurdly high. And right. the amount of stress, in all of your operations, particularly in the kitchen, is super high. And if you look at how hard cooks work and the stress put upon them, the parallel I see as a doctor is that, it's a lot like being in the OR. The amount of stress, and you're banging stuff out, and you got to be on time and do it right every single time. It's a tough business. And the reason that we did it is because I felt it was important with our brand story and the way we market. Right. So, I mean, we're a very disruptive brand, I would say. We'll do probably over 150,000 cases this year totally. So for a little distillery, we're maybe the biggest independent one. Right. And when you look around at the other craft distilleries, I consider them as our kin, not so much our competitors. So I feel like we all sort of rise with the tide and support each other. So we're all in this together, and we're fighting gigantic corporations out there who have been doing this for a long time, and they're really good at what they do. And, they'll just kick your ass in the dirt in a hot second if you let them, right? So, some of the SKUs that, we compete against on the shelf, they're spending a couple $100 million a year in marketing, and we don't. Our marketing budget is just tiny. So the way that we market is by just trying to get people to come to the distillery and win them over one sample or one bottle at a time. So the restaurant is another opportunity to do that. Show people what you're about, put flavors together, show quality. And so that's why we do it. And our partner in the restaurant is David Burke, world-renowned chef. He is New York chef, James Beard, best chef in New York twice. And he's won Top Chef and Chopped and Iron Chef. And, and he's amazing chef, super creative. And he's a friend of mine. So that's what we do. I call our food style like the tattooed version of fine dining.
It's an incredible place, and if you get a chance to check out the distillery, definitely check it out. And the restaurant, I remember actually when you all were first building the space for the restaurant, I can still remember waving to Bryan. He was up on a ladder putting I think a portrait up of Bill Murray or something. I remember seeing you guys put this together. But you guys have been great partners through the years. We love your team. We love your whiskey, your spirits. You put a lot of passion in what you do, and for craft distilleries, you all have really you've really grown it in a special way. Given what's been happening, I mean, obviously, thankfully, most liquor stores in most states are still open during COVID, but given the scene with what's happened with restaurants and bars, and we're not really sure what the future holds. What do you see as the impact that COVID will have on whiskey, bourbon, spirits going forward?
Yeah, hang on. Let me change my AirPods here because my battery just died.
Yeah, sure. Take your time there.
There we go.
And thanks for all the great smash just said best boss. Thank you, Bryan. A lot of good
right on.
Watching when we appreciate everybody who's watching. But the question was just what's happening now? What do you see as on the impact for craft distilleries and bourbon in general?
Yeah, I think the endpoint is going to matter. So I don't, as much as we want to predict what's going to happen in terms of just the outbreak and stuff. We don't really know, but I think even best case scenario with this thing peaking in the U.S. in 2 to 3 weeks and then things reopening shortly thereafter, it's going to hit bars and restaurants the most. And so I think that for craft distillers that do lower volumes and really rely on those guys, and lots of times give them products at a higher price point, but they want to take them because of the local connection and the relationships and quality of what they're looking for. I think it's going to be really tough for them. So I think a lot depends on how much relief they can get from I hate to say it, but from the government. So I think that we're going to lose a lot of bars and restaurants in the short term. As long as the economy comes back, they'll reopen with a different proprietor, or when people get back on their feet, they'll come back in. But the short-term loss is going to be big. And I think it's really going to affect the little distilleries more than anybody. I mean, small businesses don't have the cushion that, giant multinational corporations do. And, are already cash poor, lots of times. So most of our peers, are month to month, man, and they're struggling to get by and build a brand. And as you try to build a brand in this industry, it's really challenging because you're competing against the big guys, and the way they operate is by using overwhelming force. They have armies of people and lots of money, and they use it effectively. So we'll see what happens, but yeah, in the short term, it's going to be tough for sure.
Yeah. No, I think it will be. I mean, we're already seeing, unfortunately, some restaurants closing, but, we want to do all we can to encourage everyone watching, keep supporting local and keep supporting local distillers, local restaurants, bars, those that are still open. I mean, doing cocktails to go, food to go, whatever it might be. I mean, I can remember many years ago, just city to city, just seeing craft distilling